Yes, folks, the deceitful, despicable left are at it again. Yes, even during this pandemic, they're employing their crown jewel of their divide and victim creating strategy. Yes, the race card. Yes, Donald Trump is now a racist for stopping flights from China. And of course, Chinese people everywhere are being targeted by racists as if they are the real victims of this virus. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've had a gutful of the word racism. And if I had my way, I'd ban it. I'd remove it from our lexicon completely. Because thanks to the left, the word is much more toxic and dangerous now than any racism would ever be. Now, if that word were gone, we'd have a less divided culture. The race baiters would be gone along with their grievance industry, and some of our free speech would even be restored. Now, I know that sounds a tad Orwellian, but somehow we've got to stop the left exploiting that word. And I'm really open to ideas. And another thing that gets me about that word is this, the rank hypocrisy of it. We in the West are not allowed to be racist, but for some strange reason, Communist China gets a free pass. Anyway, today I'll start this off with a little bit from the War Room. And hat tip to the world of Jerry Travis for this one.
Where do you think we stand right now? You probably, of any American, know what's the ground truth in China because you make your living in knowing the ground truth in China. Where do you think we stand right now with the Chinese Communist Party and the world?
Unfortunately, we're losing because China has been able to export a chill on the freedom of speech, even here in the United States. When the Chinese government talks about national pride and things that are important to them in China, that's just them being prideful of their nation or protecting their country. When we talk about protecting our country, we're racist.
Exactly. And that not only applies to China, that also applies to Islam as well.
And they make us believe that. And it's this self-loathing that we have of each other that is really crippling us. And we really need to steel our resolve here and say, you know what? We're not racist. We're just trying to protect ourselves from pandemics, from unconventional financial warfare, from the chill on the freedom of speech in our universities.
Yes, and that's not only in America. The CCP is also controlling speech in Australian universities as well. Now, folks, I've also posted a link to this video in the description below, the rest of this video, because it's well worth watching. Now, as for a self-loathing culture, have a look at this.
Io sono cinese, ma non sono il virus.
Please hug me. I'm a Chinese, not a virus.
No, un abbraccio va benissimo.
Thank you for hugging me. While plane loads of Chinese people fly into Italy on a daily basis to spread the virus to your people via their businesses. And of course, there's no racism in China.
改变只需一颗俏皮洗衣溶珠，俏皮全国招生热线。
Yeah, anyway, now to some more racist stuff that doesn't exist in China. And hat tip to Alan Pappert for this one. Yeah, now folks, I've also posted a link to this video in the description below as well.
I come to you with proof that the Chinese government is once again lying.
So the police are coming to get me, to take me to a hotel because I'm African.
Yes, now this non-existent racism applies to both white and black Africans.
I've been in China. I have been in China the whole time this virus has happened. I have not left. I've been staying in my apartment. The police have come twice. They've given me tests. I've been tested negative. Now all the Africans in Zhuhai are going to hotels.
So I'm not going to rehash all of the racist and xenophobic incidences that have happened recently in southern China. But to recap for everyone, basically, especially in the city of Guangzhou, but not isolated to Guangzhou, all around the southern province of Guangdong, we've seen a lot of racism and xenophobia, especially towards Africans. It's sparked off a big round. It's actually made waves in the international African community with, very big and important people from Africa condemning it and, asking China to answer for what's been going on. Because Africans have been targeted based on the color of their skin and just their nationalities, and it doesn't actually matter which African country they come from. They've been targeted. They've been forced into quarantine arbitrarily. They've been denied access to hotels, restaurants, businesses. Now, all foreigners are feeling the pinch right now in China, but not as much as the African community. So, things got out of hand.
To my fellow African diaspora, a very good day to all of you. My name is Ambassador Arikana Chihumbori Kwao. Over the past couple of days, I've received many messages, emails, phone calls, and video clippings of the abuse that is being meted to our fellow African diaspora living in China. I've watched in horror Africans roaming the streets of China with their possessions after being evicted out of their homes simply because they are Africans. I've watched in horror Africans roaming the streets with their suitcases and at times with nothing at all, roaming the streets after being thrown out of their hotel rooms simply because they're Africans. I have watched in horror women carrying babies roaming the streets of China with nowhere to go after being thrown out of their homes simply because they're Africans. I've heard many stories of Africans who are married to Chinese being separated from their husbands or wives simply because they were Africans. I've heard stories about Africans being forced to take COVID-19 tests simply because they're Africans. In many cases, these individuals did not meet criteria for testing, or rather had been quarantined for the specified time period as mandated by the anti-pandemic laws of China. Not once have I heard any complaints of any African disobeying the anti-pandemic laws of China. Why is it then that Africans are being singled out and mistreated? This situation is not acceptable, it is wrong, and it will not be tolerated. As we speak, President Xi, may I remind you that we have over 10 million Chinese residing in Africa, where we have welcomed them with open arms. We have allowed the Chinese to establish themselves to marry Africans and live happily ever after in our Africa. Why can't Africans be awarded the same welcome that we have given to millions of your citizens?
Exactly. Yes, Jacinda. Why are you and all of your globalist cronies overlooking that?
What is being done to Africans in China is deplorable, and the world cannot stand by and allow it to continue.
Yeah, to be fair though, the the world cannot stand by and let black South Africans rape and kill white South African farmers either. Anyway, I'll just fast forward a bit.
The clip you saw in the beginning of my friend waiting for the police to fetch him to put him into forced quarantine. This is forced, by the way. That is a very good friend of mine. He's just like me, a white South African. In fact, the reason he's in China is because of me. I went to China, I was there for about a year and a half, and I convinced him to come and join me because I knew it was, you know, a fantastic opportunity. He came over, he fully embraced it. I set him up with a job, and then he went on to get a degree in Chinese. His Chinese is fluent, way better than mine. And the guy's really made a life for himself. But you see, because he's African, he was forced into quarantine. This proves that what the Chinese government was saying in their big press release is false and a lie. I must reiterate that my friend not only observed all of the rules during the initial quarantine, he hasn't actually left his apartment. He's been in China since August. He has a clean bill of health. He had a forced COVID-19 test at his door about 2 weeks ago where they came and 7 police arrived. They tested him. He tested negative. So he has a complete clean bill of health. But what happens? He's African, so he must be put into forced quarantine. So none of the other nationalities that I know that live in Wuhan, I know some Canadians, some British people, some Americans, I know an Australian, I know somebody who's from Sweden. Not one of these people were forced into quarantine during the exact same time. It's because he has an African passport, South African. That is why the police were forced to come and drag him essentially from his home and put him into a hotel. The proof is right there. But it doesn't end there. You heard from the messages. Other South Africans all around Guangdong, people in Foshan, people in Zhaoqing, people like literally not just Guangzhou, it's all over the Guangdong province. This was a provincial-wide mandate from the Chinese government. I've got lots of other South African friends who've been contacting me who've also been forced into quarantine. The biggest issue is all of these people are, number one, legal. They have their work visas or their spousal visas or whatever it is they have.
Some saying spreading on the internet saying that some Africans, especially Nigerians, they were being evicted from hotels or rental houses. We're trying to find out the truth. So we contacted a African person who are living in Guangzhou but asked to conceal his identity. And he said that this is because most of those people, they don't have a valid visa. So that means they are now staying in Guangzhou illegally. So they're not willing to take a nucleic acid test because their passports will reveal their illegal status.
Number two, they've all done the mandatory testing to make sure they don't have the COVID-19. And of course, they've observed all the rules. These are not people that are going out flaunting the rules, but yet they're not only forced into quarantine, but they're also forced to pay for their quarantine. So anyway, the Chinese government obviously realized it's made a big mistake, really screwed up. Africa's pissed off with them. So what do? They don't say sorry. They released him yesterday. So he only had to spend 6 days in quarantine. It was supposed to be a 14-day mandatory quarantine. But after this kicked off, they realized, wait, we've got to make a plan, some damage control. So they released him early. And then they bought him some flowers, a bouquet of freaking pink roses.
Hello. Yeah, we're gifting you this bouquet of flowers. But that's not all. Here are some oranges. No, wait, apples, not oranges. Also some grapes. Thank you for supporting our work. Let's take a photo together for propaganda purposes.
I mean, this guy, I know him. He doesn't care about flowers. And if some police guy came and gave me a bouquet of flowers, I'd feel really weird about it too. But anyway, they gave him some flowers, and they gave him a plastic packet full of fruit, 3 apples and a bunch of grapes. And, you know, that was their idea of saying sorry without saying sorry, because if you listen to the dialogue, first of all, they say, oh, you know, well done for, you know, going through this, and we're working together type thing. And then they're like, let's take a photo together, because this is just a PR stunt. They're going to take that photo, they're going to plaster it around Chinese social media and say, guess what, guys? Look at how good we are towards the Africans. We're such generous people. We give them flowers and fruit. And we're seeing a lot of these come out on state media. It's all absolute bullshit, and it's a smokescreen once again, just put up there in order to try and blind the world, or at least blind China, to their blatantly racist and xenophobic policies towards Africans.
Now, in New Zealand, if I were to say anything opposing black African immigration for any reason, I'd have the book thrown at me. I'd be called a racist and a right-wing extremist, etc. But for some strange reason, our dear leader looks the other way when it comes to her communist comrades in China. Rank hypocrisy, folks.